Hey guys, what is up? Unrested back again today with a very mysterious and important story. I want to get this one out here because I've always really been into missing persons case, and rarely do we ever see where someone comes over to Japan and their case becomes a missing persons case. And this is a really odd one if you are any bit into some very interesting missing persons cases. This has got to be one of the more interesting ones I've ever researched in my life, just because I know quite a bit, having lived in Japan for 15 years, about how the Japanese system of coming over here and living here works. And there's some things that were done that I don't know how this person who went missing did them. Let's just get into it so I can introduce everything. I'm going to read a little bit of an overview of what exactly happened. This person's name is Sky Budnick, and she went missing in Hokkaido, Japan, all the way back in 2008, around March 31st. I myself came to Japan in February 14th, 2007. So this is almost exactly to the day a year after I came here. This person came here and went missing. And she came here on a one-way ticket, which is a whole nother can of worms. I don't know how that could have happened, because usually you need to have a return ticket to visit Japan, especially if you don't have any type of special visa. So let's get into it, and let's also talk about this overview. On April 1st, 2008, Sky, who was 21 at the time, bought a one-way ticket to Japan without telling anyone and was never heard from again. Sky was very into Japanese culture and anime, and she was learning Japanese in college, I believe, reading 3 years of study she had done, which is good. That's great to come to Japan already with a bit of a knowledge of the language. I will say, though, anyone I've met who's studied in college in America, usually when they come to Japan, they still can't speak very much Japanese, just because immersion is the best teacher when it comes to any language. But they do catch on to it a lot faster than the average person like myself, who came over here with zero knowledge of the language. It took me far longer probably than what Sky would have been able to do. At one point, she told her mom that if she ever got married, it would likely be to a Japanese man. Right before she left, on March 31st, 2008, she visited her family and asked her mom to make her favorite cupcakes one last time. I saw other ones that said she asked her to make her favorite cookies. Not a huge thing, but I like to correct even small things I see discrepancies on. Her mom believed that she was staying with a friend, so she wasn't reported missing until days after she had already arrived in Japan. Her family only found that she had left the country after they went through her email on her brother's computer. Apparently, she had used her brother's computer to log in. Luckily, that saved her password, so he was able to get through. Hence, they were able to confirm that she booked a ticket to Japan. It was a one-way ticket to Tokyo and then a connecting flight to Hokkaido. They couldn't look through her laptop because she brought it with her. Other than the laptop, she had a Game Boy DS, which I'm guessing she probably used the kanji game that was on there that you can learn kanji really fast with. It's a great game for learning kanji in Japan. And $800, which, wow, $800 in 2008 would be a little bit risky. I came over here with $2,000, and even I was very stingy on what I spent on, and that still only lasted me for about, I think, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months I stretched it to. I was working a job and getting paid at the same time, but your initial things that you need to buy to survive, like, even simple things like food and plates to eat the food on, it took your money pretty fast. Her mom didn't notice any suitcase or clothing missing. Instead of staying in Tokyo, she landed and then immediately caught another flight to Hokkaido, a much smaller, less touristy and English-friendly town. Now, I saw a lot of people saying Hokkaido is not as English-friendly as Tokyo, but I saw no one out there mentioning the fact that there's a lot of Australians who live in Hokkaido because they start ski resorts out there. And she didn't go straight to Sapporo, which is like the capital. She planned to go to Sapporo later, but she originally, if I believe correctly, she went to Masawa, which is more so countryside, where a lot of these what would you call, like ski resorts exist, the ski slopes. In recent years, a lot of Australians have returned home because the economy dipped so bad during COVID that a lot of these resorts shut down. So I don't know how many out there are still remaining, but in 2008 they were doing pretty well. There were a few sightings of Sky, none of which reported her seeming distressed or upset in any way. It seems like she stayed at a Japanese-style hotel, a ryokan, which would have onsen. That's a hot spring. I don't know if she stayed in the classic type like that. They don't fully explain it, but they said she seemed very cheerful and very upbeat. Any other guests who saw her said she seemed like she was having the time of her life. It had always been her life dream to go to Japan, so that makes sense. I mean, you are fully immersed in Japanese culture when you go to the Japanese countryside right away. Another key detail is that in her email account, her family found an unsent email that was originally supposed to go to a friend. This email could have read as a end of life letter, I guess is the best way I can put it. I can't say the word or my video will get taken down maybe. But her family said it sounds more like a starting over letter. Check out her sister on TikTok. Her name is Megan Lebron. That's MEGAN LEBRON, all one word, at TikTok, because she covers this case in full, obviously, because it is her family member, her sister. And I remember reading about that when Sky went missing on the day that she left to Japan. Megan had a strong pain in her head that debilitated her enough that she had to go home and go to the hospital for some testing, almost kind of like I'm not a big believer in psychic stuff. I'm not going to be one of these crazy people who does a tarot card reading on where somebody is. But I have seen stuff before in the past where when a child or a family member goes missing, the other one suddenly feels like a pang of pain. There's probably something there to this day we still don't understand. And that's what Megan felt. I just thought I would mention that because it was very interesting. And usually there's some kind of negative emotion connected to that when they suddenly feel a pang of pain and then find out later exactly around the time that they felt that something drastic happened to a family member. Again, I don't want to say, the end of life type situation is what happened, but some people are leading on to that. There's other people who have other theories, and I kind of want to go through some of them and discount quite a few because there's some that are just impossible. So first of all, you're probably wondering, well, like if she went missing, did they go to the police? Did they go to the airport? Did they go to Japan? Yes, they did all those things. They followed up quite well. The police really couldn't do much, and I understand they must have been frustrated. This is a situation where when the police would have said like, well, maybe she ran away, and then they check the email and it says, I bought a ticket to Japan. They're like, see, she ran away. Now she's in Japan. Japan is a country that tries to keep things very private, so they weren't very helpful either. The airport also keeps things private because it deals with financial records and stuff like that. So they were doing their best to try and get answers, and corporations and the police were kind of doing what their job entails as far as saying, well, she's 21 years old, she's an adult, she can do what she wants. Japan, on top of it, very private place. They're not going to release a lot of information on somebody, even if they're a family member. And yeah, there's, people who run away in Japan. It happens all the time. People leave a life because it's too stressful, or they're sick of being a salaryman, or there's so many different reasons. I saw some people, the most ridiculous ones I saw were people are like, well, maybe she went to Aokigahara, the suicide forest. So there I said the word. No, she definitely didn't do that. That area is over 1,000 kilometers away from where she landed. And they said she immediately left Tokyo when she got there. And there's actual plane tickets that back that up. She didn't suddenly make a trip down there. There's, that I can almost say 100% that she did not go there to end her life. That's not, she would have taken another plane, or there would have been at least like a bunch of different tickets that would have led a paper trail to Aokigahara. That's like that's really out there. She would have to even get like a ride from an individual who would be driving out there to begin with, even if she took all the public transportation possible. Her family did go to Japan. They did hand out flyers. I couldn't find anywhere if they put the flyers in English or Japanese. If they put them in Japanese, probably people would have paid a little bit more attention, but I have a feeling they might have only been able to do English, which it's understandable. They're not going to suddenly learn a country's language just because they've had to rush over there to find a missing daughter. So, I mean, you got to cut them some slack. Um, they said not a lot of Japanese people would take the flyers that they were trying to hand out to find their missing daughter, which it, there's going to be a massive language barrier, understanding, communication, cultural. Like, why are these gaijin out there in the middle of the street handing out flyers? I've never seen these people before. The area would have been really kind of closed off from the rest of the really urban areas. So it's a city slash suburban, very small town atmosphere where they would have been like, I've never seen this group of gaijin family members before, and now they're trying to hand me out something. I don't understand what's going on. Plus, there's this thing with a lot of Japanese people, and while I understand it, I know how frustrating it can probably be for someone coming over here looking for somebody, where they think if you hand out the flyer, the person will then try to talk to you or convince you of selling you something, or try to talk to you because they saw a person who would probably speak English. They thought, oh no, is this person going to try and engage me in an English conversation, and I don't know enough English. And it's not that they're like being counterculture and saying like I refuse to learn the English language. They just don't want to be put on the spot. It's almost like you're taking a language quiz. Like, do you understand what I'm saying right now while I'm talking to you in English? No, I don't. That's very rude of me. I'm so sorry. That's the way the Japanese would have approached it, that they would have almost thought like it would be rude of me to even engage this person in conversation because I can't speak their language. They're not thinking like, I'm not going to learn a new language to find out who this girl I don't know is. They're just like super kind of scared, anxiety, held back, nervous about maybe I say the inappropriate thing. This is a really touchy situation. A girl went missing. There's so many different extra barriers that a lot of the people looking into this case, they've never come to Japan. They're like, well, I don't understand why people wouldn't be nice enough to just walk up and talk to the family. It's not that they were being mean or disregarding the family's pain. They probably just didn't even know what was going on. There were news stories, but I can tell you, having lived here in Japan in 2008, and I'm still living here today, I've never seen a news story about this. I never heard about this until just recently. I actually had a viewer who, I don't know if she wants me to shout out her name, but she sent me this back in October, and I missed it because it said something about one-way ticket to Japan, and I thought somebody was trying to sell me something, and I ignored because it was in my spam box in Twitter. But luckily I checked it out. I looked it up, and I was like, well, this is crazy interesting. How did I never hear about this? So this has got to be a rough situation. Her sister Megan is still on TikTok to this day, doing all she can to try and find Sky. There's only so much she can do as she's living her own life now, and Japan is 12,000 miles away. She doesn't speak Japanese. She doesn't have any connection to anybody in Japan that's going out of their way to look for her. They said when they tried to contact the police were also kind of like, well, I mean, if nothing dangerous happened, if there's no sense of foul play or anything, like, why would we go look for this person who simply wants to come to our country and visit? Like, once again, it's a situation where Japan likes to keep privacy very private, even if you are from another country. They're really, really into that, unless they know you have like some kind of criminal offense or something like that. But they're really hardcore about keep everything private. I mean, the laws are way different. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to go into a big thing about it, but they're definitely big about doing that. So I saw some other silly things that I thought, like, this is impossible. Definitely there would be reports of this. Some people were like, well, maybe she did finally marry a Japanese man. Well, as of recent, Japan has reported that there's no visa status for Sky within Japan, and if you get married, you have a spousal visa that gets recorded. On top of it, what's very strange is she had no visa support whatsoever. And I know back during 2008, if I'm correct, you could, now everything's changed a lot, so take this with a grain of salt because I haven't kept up with every single visa law possible out there. But I remember in around 2007, 2008, you could come to Japan for 3 months as a tourist, and you didn't need any kind of special visa. I don't know how much that has changed since COVID and everything like that. The laws are all different now, but I believe she could have stayed here for as long as 3 months on just a ticket. Now, what's strange is like you usually can't get into Japan with a one-way ticket. They want to see that you have a way to get back. Or if you're going to stay here for an extended amount of time, they either, number one, want to see that you have a massive bank account that you're going to transfer money over here because it benefits the country, or you're going to maybe start a business here, or you have a job you have lined up. Even a student visa is okay because that means you're paying somebody in the country money to stay here. They don't just want people to suddenly immigrate over to Japan and become part of the welfare system. And look, I'm absolutely not saying that is a scenario that happened. I don't think Sky had any intention at all of doing that. I think she did just really want to visit Japan. I think that was her only intention. Now, some people have said, well, maybe she ended her life out in the area of Hokkaido she was at. I don't know how sure I am of that either. This is a really hard thing to say because I don't want to make the end of the story that she did end her life out there. If she did wander into the wilderness of Misawa and get out there really deep and, I guess succumb to the cold because she went there in March. Hokkaido is brutally cold during that time. It's as far north as you can go in Japan. It's the last part of the country. You try to travel any farther, you're going to have to hop the ocean over to Russia. It can get very cold. I've been there at the very tip of fall before, and I've been there in the summer, and I've been in there in the deep winter, and even at the tip of fall, it is already getting really cold, like a wind chill factor that will make you have to wear very heavy clothes. So wandering out into the wilderness without the proper clothing, and they said that she didn't go there with much at all. She even left one of her big jackets in her car, which is kind of disheartening to hear. At the same time, I feel like there is a lot of searching always going on in Japan. Like people who go missing in Japan usually get found because, number one, the country's pretty compact, okay? Number two, there's not a lot of privacy as far as Japan is concerned. Now, I know you're like, aren't you contradicting what you just said? Privacy in the sense of investigating personal things, but when you wander out into public, you usually can be seen by a lot of people. I probably couldn't find a place to hide even on the street next to my house. Every nook and cranny has somebody going through it here. Now, I realize she's in, the countryside, that's vast wilderness and stuff like that. But you got to remember, there's still people who go on hikes. There's still people who can even go hunting in Hokkaido. Yes, there are hunters out there. There's people who still have farms out there. There's still stuff out in the wilderness. It's not just like a barren wasteland. So, unless she forged her own path into a completely unknown, very super isolated area, I would be very surprised. Now, of course, no one's actually done a search for her. No one's actually gone out and tried to search for a body or search for her wandering off. Some people have said, well, maybe she settled down into a job or a spouse or a life there. I find that very hard to believe. If you overstay your visa or you overstay your ticket in Japan, they find out very quickly. And also her being gaijin, no offense to her, but the police stop you far more often if you're a white person in Japan. If you're any color other than Asian, you are going to get stopped, and eventually a police person's going to look at, hey, can you show me your passport, your ID? Can you show me your gaijin card? What are you doing here? Do you work out in this area? Because we've never seen you out in this area before. They are very strict about that. I've been stopped I don't know how many times, and I've lived here 15 years. Some of the police in my area know exactly who I am. They know me by name because they see me every day. I walk by the Koban, all right? Not because I've gotten in any kind of trouble. My record is very clear. But if she had been wandering even through a small town, okay, even other Japanese people or even other police would have wondered, is she lost? Is she okay? The Japanese are very curious why a gaijin is out there, especially out in an area where gaijin very, very, very rarely go. So I think she would have been stopped by the police. I think she would have been asked about what's going on. Japanese people are curious why you're out there, especially in areas that they don't normally see you in. If I go out to the countryside and I stay at a hotel and I just walk downstairs and go to a nearby kombini, the stairs in the kombini are like, they don't even, I think they're unconscious of how hard they're staring at me, because their mind is obliterated that they're seeing a gaijin out, and they're what is this guy doing here? What? Like, they're not angry, they're not mean, they're not rude, they're just really shocked. And they would have been the same way if she was out in a super countryside area. Now, she was staying at a ryokan, which, I mean, I'm sure they get a bunch of international travelers through there. Ryokan is something a lot of people want to do. It's the very, very authentic Japanese way to enjoy Japan, going to the onsen, enjoying the cold, enjoying the snow. She said she wanted to stay for the Sakura blossom, which I believe in Hokkaido around that time would have been like March, April, around that time. June is too late. So by about that time, you know, snow and stuff would have melted after she had seen the Sakura blossom. And I imagine a body would have been found had she taken her own life or wandered into the wilderness. At the same time, now I've got to wonder also, is there foul play involved? Have gaijin been murdered in Japan before? Yes, there's two very famous cases, Katie Hawker and, oh God, I can't remember the other girl's name offhand. But I've covered two cases on this, and usually what differs is that this has happened mostly in a big city like Tokyo. That's where most of the murders of gaijin have happened, because all kinds of crazy stuff can go on there. There's, you know, people working in the red light district. No offense to anybody in, you know, sex work. I'm not mocking that at all, but it is a dangerous line of work. Now, of course, Sky had nothing to do with that, and she was in a super duper countryside area. I'd be surprised if there was even something like a snack bar out there, maybe like a mamaya for karaoke or something like that would be the most that they would have. So again, she's not, you know, going about the most grim, seedy areas of Japan where, you know, there is more crime. She's in an area that's pretty crime-free. And let me tell you, I mean, like, Japan is one of the safest places you can go. To this day, I will completely grant Japan the fact that they have a very, very low crime rate, and that Japanese in general, for the most part, are very, very safe. This has really, really left me wondering what could have happened to this poor girl. Like, what ended her story? I know it's grim to say, but the only thing that makes sense is her having wandered into the wilderness, and maybe she just got lost. You know, maybe she wandered into the wilderness to see the Sakura blossoms she had always wanted to see. Some people said that one of her last quotes before leaving was that if she could see the Sakura blossoms of Japan, she would die happy, which I hope that's not exactly what it means. Anyway, guys, I wanted to throw this one out there. I'd like to research this one even more and get into this deeper. If you've heard anything about this case yourself, or you have some information, let me know. If you live in Hokkaido and you have more information about this one, or you've researched this one a bunch yourself, man, I would love to hear more. I'd love to get deeper into this case. I mean, I wish I could get closer to finding some kind of answer about this one, because this one's left me really puzzled. This is not, I don't think I've ever read a case where someone comes to Japan and goes missing, and they came here on a one-way ticket and they don't find anything at all. And I'm really kind of also surprised that, like, Japan doesn't get more coverage for this case, because Japan doesn't like to have a bad international rap. Like, especially if like a murder happens here in Japan, Japan likes to get that thing solved ASAP. Like, they'll sometimes solve those faster than they'll solve their own, you know, nationals getting murdered, because it looks bad for them and they lose face on an international level. So I'm kind of surprised how much this one's been swept under the rug. It's wild. I've got a few friends out in Hokkaido. I'll try to make some contacts and see what I can do with them. But wow, what a mysterious case. What a very, very interesting and sad case that I'd love to learn more about. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, please relay any information you might have. get the word out there about this one. If you could share this video, I never ask anybody to share my videos, but I think this is an important one to share so we can get the word out there. Let's try to do that. And until next time, I've been Unrested. Have a great rest of the day and stay safe.